I always say that I was born and raised in India, but I grew up in the United States. So my mental growing up happened here, even though I was not born and raised here. So I feel that my upbringing informs who I am as a human being. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being both. I've been accused of, in relationships and all that, people will say, well, your heart is in two places. Your heart is split. And I decided that my heart is not split. I just grew a whole new one.
Episode 16, Owning Your Superpower, with linguist and connector Niharika Chibber Joe. Hello, everyone. For this episode, I'm honored to welcome Ms. Niharika Chibber Joe. We met through her current work at the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission, a federal agency that strives to strengthen U.S. Japan relations. I respect Niharika immensely as someone who's continuously carved her own path as she grew up in India, studied Japanese, and became so good that she got a master's in it and became an interpreter, and is now based in DC working on U.S. Japan relations. I hope to discuss her career spanning nonprofits, the private sector, and the government. And I'm also fascinated by her identity, as she is currently one of the very few people of South Asian descent in the US Japan space, and how she might help diversify this landscape. So thank you so much, Niharika, for joining me today.
Much for having me, Shiori, and thank you for the kind words.
Thank you. First, may I ask where you were born and raised?
I was born in India on a military base in a town called Ahmednagar, which is on the west coast of India. It's not very far from Mumbai, but that's
Okay.
not where I'm from. But I think it shapes my identity because I identify first and foremost as a military brat. So
Mm,
my father was in the army and he was training on this military base. My memory is more of being in different parts of India, but if I call a part of the world home, that would be Delhi because I mostly grew up in Delhi.
okay. Okay. And I understand that many people in India speak different languages. And so I understand you probably do as well. So if
Yes.
you could please describe that. And also, I feel like we all code switch when we speak different languages. And were you used to doing that from a young age?
Yes, code switching is an interesting phenomenon because when I've read about the history of code switching, it's been when people have wanted to assimilate and not, and to not really share where they're from or what their real identity is. And so
Mm,
for me, growing up in India, the code switching was just part of who you were with, what side of the family you were with, who your friends were, and what you were basically talking about.
mm,
So my mom and dad spoke to each other only in English, which was very weird.
interesting.
Um, Not to me, but
Oh,
to my friends, to
oh,
classmates,
mm-hmm.
because they didn't understand it. My mom and dad are both military brats too, grown up all over, and they communicated in English. My mom and I speak to each other in Bangla and English and Hindi. And my mother is a professor of English. She's a prolific writer. English is comes very naturally to her. And but we had this mixture because her family heritage is from Bengal,
Mm.
but she never grew up there. So I always joke that my Bangla is better than hers. But she's
Wow.
not the one who taught me, and I cannot tell you how I
Mm,
picked it up.
mm.
But I'm illiterate in Bangla, but I speak it fluently.
Wow.
I also speak Punjabi. My dad's heritage is
Okay.
Punjabi.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm illiterate in Punjabi, but I speak it fluently. And and then, various dialects and languages. And I think for me, somebody who mimics, and maybe I have an ear
Mm-hmm.
that picks up sound and wants to reproduce it in the same way, that I found that I could um, code switch, I guess, and language switch but also personality changes. And I
Mhm.
know
Mhm.
some of your other podcast guests have
Mhm.
talked about that. I might get a little bit more boisterous in a certain language, or when I speak Japanese, I go very inward.
Mhm.
And, when I'm speaking English like an American, it's very different from when I speak English like a cosmopolitan Indian. And so it
Interesting.
changes. Yeah, it's fascinating
Mhm.
how everything in your being
Mhm.
shifts. And in the United States, there's a lot of "where are you from?"
Mhm.
questions.
Mhm.
And then you say, you might, Shiori say, "I'm from Hawaii."
Mhm.
And my parents lived here and then I went there, and no, but they'll be like, "Well, where are you from?"
I know. It's so annoying.
So instead of the from question, I got,
Mhm.
"What is your mother tongue?"
Interesting.
Because my name does not suggest my face, and in India, your last name can literally determine your address
Mm.
or where you're from in your family lineage.
Mhm.
So the way I look doesn't line up with my last name,
Interesting.
because even though I'm Indian, I am a mixed person,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
is a fascinating concept. And so yeah, I got bullied because of that, because I didn't have a mother tongue, and because they couldn't figure out where everybody wants to put you in a box, and they
Mm.
couldn't figure out which box, and there were several boxes that I
Mhm.
could jump in and out of, and
Mhm.
as kids, that wasn't something that you did, and I was an only child for a long time,
Mm. Mhm.
until I was 11 years old.
Mhm.
And so that was an issue too, because everybody had brothers and sisters and I did not. And so if I said English was my mother tongue, that was a problem. Growing up in India, like, what kind of bourgeois thing are you talking about, where
Mhm.
you are trying to show off and nobody has English as their mother tongue? You're Indian. How would you have English as your mother tongue? And so, I used to sometimes just make stuff up to just get by,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
not have to have those conversations, or the nana nana boo boo, she doesn't have a mother tongue kind of thing.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, so code switching comes very naturally, and adapting comes very naturally, and that.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think there's so much in common between India and Japan, even though it's so much an advantage that you know all these different cultures and languages. I feel like as a child, you need to sometimes pretend that you don't know them, or sometimes you need
Mhm.
to, you are made to feel, yeah, like a little bit irregular or an outsider. And I also thought it was so interesting that even in the same language, you said that even within English, you code switch between American English versus the cosmopolitan speaker of English.
Yes,
And
yes,
that's
I
so
do. I
interesting.
do. I so if I'm talking to you right now and
Mm-hmm.
my parents were to call,
Mm-hmm.
I would be I would not be speaking like this.
Mm-hmm.
I would speak in my, yeah, in my what I call the cosmopolitan Indian accent, because what I've been trying to explain to people for my
Mm-hmm.
entire time in the United States
Mm-hmm.
is that there isn't one Indian accent.
Right.
The one that people mimic,
Mm.
which is, the call center guy, or or Apu on The
Mm.
Simpsons, who wasn't even Indian, it was Hank Azaria. And
So terrible.
so there is this staccato, and
Right.
that's not how I speak, and that's not how my family speaks.
Mm.
And of course there are regional accents,
Mm.
but yeah, it switches. So if I were to speak in an American way
Mm-hmm.
to my friends and family back home,
Mm-hmm.
that sounds pretentious to them,
Mm.
because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't grow up here.
Right.
It would be like, "Oh, okay, cut it out. You're with us now."
Okay.
It's that.
Huh.
Like, okay, it's very interesting how that
Mm-hmm.
works.
Mm-hmm. that is really fascinating.
Yeah.
I remember going to college on the East Coast and then coming back to Hawaii, to my high school and talking to classmates and somebody said like, "Oh, you have an East Coast accent now."
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
even within the same country. So
Yeah.
interesting.
And they and it's not it's like you're a sellout.
Hmm.
It's not a compliment. I used to be a
Hmm.
very purist. It is somebody who studies languages, very much a purist of this is how the language needs to be spoken. And then I read a lot and I realized that language is organic, it's evolving,
Hmm.
and the aim is to be able to communicate. And in an environment where I'm not the majority,
Hmm.
there is maybe a prejudice or something when I'm talking to somebody who doesn't know me.
Hmm.
So the easiest way to get through to them is to be able to speak like them. And then
Mm.
that to me is something that's maybe disarming. And then you can get further. So for me, yes, I started speaking like this,
Hmm.
um, only because I remember being on an airplane
Hmm.
and asking for a glass of water.
Mm.
And it was I was on United Airlines and she was like, "Excuse me?" And,
I can see that.
and I was like, "Could I have some water, please?" "Excuse me?" And so then I was like, "Oh, could I please have a glass of water?" And
Yeah.
I got my water. So I realized that there was something that I had to switch up. And I didn't feel like the burden was on me
Mm.
to do that. I just approached it as I live in another country, I learned their language. If I lived in
Mm.
Sweden, I would be speaking Swedish. I would be trying.
Mhm. Mhm.
If I lived in
Yeah.
Japan, I would want my Japanese to get better. I would want to practice it. So
Mhm.
why not here? So now I sound like I'm from Virginia.
That is so cool.
I
That is incredible.
know, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you mentioned that some people, it's such a rude comment, but they'd be surprised when you say you're from India and they're like, "Where's your accent?"
All the
But
time.
it's
It's been so long. I wish and the world has advanced, right? We've
Mhm.
we've gotten very far away from that. So I remember when I first came to the States, I've been asked, did you ride elephants? You know.
Oh my goodness.
So I said only on special occasions
So cute.
for to go to school. But or I remember people would watch the Indiana Jones movie,
Mm.
and there was some like monkey brain being eaten by
Oh yeah, I remember that. Mm.
by the character, and I was asked if that's what we eat. And so for me, it was like, no, it's really expensive. And so only on special Sundays is when my mom makes it.
Jeez. It's so funny.
So then my smart mouth comes and goes. And
Mhm.
sometimes I think I've gotten to a point where I'm thinking it's not even worth it. People are so high strung these days. Just move on.
Mhm.
But now I'm like, sure, yeah, it's high protein, whatever. But there was a time where you had to use humor because the absurdity of it.
Mhm.
When you stop to think about it, you're like, first of all, where does this ignorance come from?
Right.
And secondly, what gall to be able to say this. And when people start out with, I don't mean to be rude,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
uh,
I know it's coming. Yeah.
so but over time, it just people are better. There's more information.
Mm.
The opposite is also true
Mm.
because of the so-called model minority
Mm. Yeah.
thing. And so the assumption is that I'm a doctor. And then when I say, "Oh, I study Japanese, and this is what I was like, why? Because you couldn't
Mm.
become a doctor.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
so yeah, it's a journey. It really
Mhm.
is.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for all those anecdotes. It really helps illustrate the
I know, right?
all, all the
Uh,
prejudice you go through, no matter where you are.
no, it doesn't matter where
Mhm.
you are. And
Mm,
I think I've received the same kind of comments growing up in India too,
mm, mhm.
about the color of my skin. I'm too dark. So, oh, how sad. You'll never get married. Look at the color of your skin. I've been told
Oh
that
my
to my
God.
face by,
Oh my goodness.
the sort of well-meaning auntie crowd.
Mm,
Um, and then there's all kinds of, it's not just living in the United States.
mhm, mhm.
You encounter it everywhere. I told you I've watched all your podcasts, and I
Thank you.
found that a lot of it resonates or is a shared experience.
Right. Mm,
And so here we are.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, thank you. And I did want to ask, like, why you became interested in Japan and why you decided to study Japanese, if you
You
wouldn't mind
you
talking
know,
about that.
I fell into Japan, and I always feel like I don't have some big story. Growing up in the United States, no matter when you grew up, and being interested in Japan is very different from growing up in India when I did, and being interested in Japan, because I don't think there was that kind of interest
Mm,
in Japan where it was, I want to go study in Japan, or I saw this and I'm, very interested in Japan or anything like that. I didn't have that. I
mhm,
actually wanted to study Russian.
mm. Wow.
And because that was a language that I had had some exposure to, my
Mm,
dad had been sent to Moscow for training, military training and
mm.
whatnot. And he had studied Russian. My toys were from Russia. I
Wow.
had books that were Russian fairy tales and whatnot. So that's what
Oh,
I was consuming and growing up on as a kid. And then
uh,
Russian sounded really good to me.
yeah, yeah.
Just the sound of it.
Mhm,
And Japanese had never come up. So I wanted to study Russian. And I graduated from high school pre-med,
mhm,
interested in medical school, but in India, you go to medical school right after you graduate from high school.
mm, mhm,
And so you don't go to college first. And I was 17 when I graduated from high school, and hadn't really prepared the way you're supposed to prepare. Think of it like in Japan when people study for the foreign service exam or all of that. It's very intense,
mhm,
and you're competing with millions of people. And I hadn't really put in that effort. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do. And the default was always that I would study English literature because my mom is a professor of English literature.
mhm,
And and then I learned about this university that offered a BA
mhm,
in language, BA honors, as they say,
mm,
in those countries over there. That it's so they had offered a BA in these various languages, and you had to take an entrance test.
mhm,
And the entrance test was a very difficult one. And I scored high on it. And because I scored high on it, I was given the choice of studying Japanese, Chinese, or Arabic,
mm,
because those were the most difficult languages.
mhm, mhm,
And and then I picked Japanese because after consulting with my mom, and she had done her PhD at the same university, she knew all the
mm,
professors.
mhm,
And so she talked to them, and it turned out that in Russian, you didn't really have to study that much. And
mm.
everybody who didn't know what they wanted to do or who wanted to be tour guides were going into Russian. Japanese was more serious. And so I
Interesting.
literally got into the study of Japan because I got in and it was a difficult language and serious people study Japanese. And there was a chance that after you studied Japanese that you could get a real job because Japan had
Mm,
started investing in India at the time.
mhm,
The economy had liberalized in India and investment from Japan was coming in. So there would be jobs. And so that's how I started IEUAO.
that is
uh,
incredible.
yeah,
Yeah.
and never looked back
Mm,
from the
mhm,
age of 17. And I have to thank my teachers were all Indian people who had benefited immensely from Japan Foundation scholarships and fellowships,
Mm-hmm.
and they had gone to Japan on them, and they spoke wonderful Japanese, unaccented, wonderful Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
and at a very high level. So our curriculum was very, very intense,
Mm-hmm.
and I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because I enjoyed it, I did well in it, and it was a self-reinforcing thing.
That is so interesting because it's very,
Yeah.
very different from, yeah, what we usually hear on why people became interested in Japan. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think it's often culture, especially now, like Japanese culture is usually the entry point. And so I think what strikes me is that you mentioned earlier that you're a language purist, and it really makes sense considering that language was your entry point, and that's how he
Yeah.
got into it.
It was India in the 90s, and we did not have access to original textbooks
Hmm.
because they were just very expensive.
Mm,
And so our senseis had their textbooks and dictionaries that they had gotten during their fellowships,
mm,
and we used those, and we used photocopy versions
wow.
of those. So all of the Japanese books that I owned for study, all my dictionaries, the big Genkusha, all of those huge things
Hmm.
are because I won them in speech contests. So I used to
Incredible.
participate in speech contests, Japanese
Uh-huh.
language speech contests, so I could win books.
Wow.
And so all of my books are hard won because I just that was the way that you could get books from Japan
Hmm.
without paying
Hmm.
for them,
That is
because they
just
were each like 70, 80, $120, and
mhm,
nobody could afford that.
right.
um so yeah, so my books are all, and they're kind of obsolete now because nobody's using giant dictionaries anymore,
Mm,
or the
mhm,
character dictionaries. The famous one was the Nelson. We called it the Nelson. And but I have them because they have tremendous sentimental value,
of course.
so I still have them.
Mhm, mhm. It should be a family heirloom,
Yeah, I
seriously.
know, I think so. They're in my
Mhm,
office.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that's really how I got interested in Japan, through language,
Mhm, mhm.
and then that grew from there. But there was never any. The JET program was not available in India at the time,
Oh, I see.
so
Okay.
that was not something on the radar.
Mhm,
Opportunities to go to Japan were very, very few and far between. And,
mhm,
your senseis went because they had limited opportunities too.
mhm,
And so for us students, there was never any concept of going to Japan
mm.
for
I
anything.
see.
For travel, that was prohibitive in terms of just cost. And there weren't any scholarship, fellowship opportunities as such.
Mhm,
So I studied Japanese without knowing if I would ever go to Japan.
mhm, mhm.
It was fascinating now that I
Yeah.
think about it.
Mhm, mhm,
And stuck with it.
mhm,
I've never lived in Japan. I have never studied in Japan.
mhm, mhm,
But I have done everything with the language that
mhm.
people who have done all those things do or may not even do.
Right.
And that's because of my teachers. And we didn't have any native Japanese teachers,
Mhm,
but we did have the spouses of Japanese company people who were coming and living in India,
mhm,
and their wives needed something to do, and some of them were more Genki than others, and so they would
mhm.
come into our university, and we would have sessions with them
Oh, nice.
where we would hang out with a native Japanese speaker,
Mhm,
and they would teach us mannerisms and accent
mhm.
and things like that.
you also pursued your studies in a master's degree as well, but what made you draw to Japanese in particular? What about the language do you love, especially?
There's nothing, Shiori, that is very grandiose about this. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
kid who is a language nerd. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
And it was, they taught us kotowaza.
Mm-hmm.
They taught us onomatopoeia. We had gyongo, we had giseigo, and then I started finding that all of that existed in the various Indian languages that I spoke. So
Mm.
Bengali language has a lot of gyongo and giseigo.
Really
Yes.
interesting.
So when your head hurts,
Mm.
if you want to say my head hurts in Bangla, you say my head is going ton ton.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, if it's raining,
Mm.
then you say the rain is falling tupur tapur.
That's
And
cute.
so there were things like that
Mm.
that made complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was easy. It
Mm-hmm.
was very easy linguistically to get into Japanese.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And kanji were the death of me because we had to know all kanji ever written.
Oh my God.
After 3 years in college of Japanese language study, Nihongo Senmon, you had to
Mm.
be able to read the Asahi Shimbun
Oh my goodness.
without a
Wow.
dictionary.
What? That's
Yes.
a lot.
So, and we had interpretation class,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to be able to interpret. Your sensei
Mm-hmm.
would read, and my sensei, the interpretation sensei, was the interpreter for the Prime Minister of India, and he was hardcore.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
so it was, yeah, it was extremely serious. So I used to like every night,
Mm.
writing kanji, writing kanji, writing kanji, and
Wow.
dreaming about kanji. I had a very famous
Oh my
dream
goodness. Mm.
of how the aruku walking kanji
Mm.
had like big boots on and was walking and stomping all over me
Mm. Oh my gosh.
because yeah, I language dreams.
Oh my goodness. That
And
is. Mm.
so yeah, we had to study really hard, and I think what developed from that was a real love of the language and
Mm-hmm.
and the usages
Mm-hmm.
and the fact and then the joy one got from hanging out with visiting Japanese people and throwing in a kotowaza here and there while you're speaking, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
well, how do you know this? And you're like,
Mm.
well, my sensei taught me and
Mm.
I've been used to using this, and i
Mm.
still i still use them. And so even though I feel like my Japanese is not as excellent as it used to be, or it
Mm.
could be just because of lack of practice, um, I still, people are still amazed. And then that amazement doesn't stop there because then everything else doesn't add up.
Mm.
Because
Mhm.
then you haven't lived in Japan, you haven't done jet, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. Then, why those things?
Mhm. Mhm.
Why do you speak Japanese the way you do if you haven't done all of these other things that are the known pathways
Mm.
to language proficiency? And what I'm trying to say is that there are many pathways, and that's what I tell young people, that there is no one road that if you do this and this and this, you will land here. I am a prime example of the nonlinear,
Mhm.
going round and round and round and round, not knowing what you want to do.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, one day, you're the deputy of a federal agency in the United States, and you're like, well,
Mhm.
how did that happen?
Thank you so much. And you said you studied interpretation, and you also became an interpreter later on,
I
right? At
did,
the
yes.
Suzuki Motor Corporation. Would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, when we were in college, the only ways to make money of any sort, earn a little pocket money, so you could buy your books if you didn't win them,
Mm.
was kate kyoshi. We were tutoring these spouses of the Japanese company people. So we would go to their homes and we would tutor them
Mm,
English.
mhm,
And so that was a way of earning some money. The second way of earning money, by the time we were in our second year of Japanese, for those of us who were so into it that we lived and breathed it, that you would start getting tiny interpretation jobs.
mm.
And those paid really well. I wouldn't take notes when I was interpreting consecutively,
Oh, wow.
because if I started to take notes, it would distract me. So I
Oh,
held
okay.
everything in my head. The
Amazing.
only time I took notes was when there was a number,
Mhm.
and it was some kind of oku
Mm.
or
Oh, God. I hate those
hundreds of
numbers.
man
Yes.
or
Oh.
whatever. And
Mhm,
in India, we have a different numbering system.
mhm.
So when you get into 100,000, the comma is at a different place.
Oh,
So
wow.
100,000, the comma is after one, then again after two zeros.
Mhm,
And it's called, there's a word for it. So just like Oku and Cho and Man and all this, so
mhm.
100,000 in India is a lakh, LAKH, 1 lakh.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
So it's 1,50,000, 1 lakh, whatever. And I think 100 lakhs,
Mhm.
which is, I don't know, 10 million. I don't know. Don't ask me numbers. Is called a crore.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
there you're talking in lakhs and crores, and
Mhm.
then you've got mancho, oku, all of that.
Oh my God.
And so those are the only things I used to write and like shift
Yeah.
zeros around.
Okay.
But I found that if I did anything else, it would throw me off my game. So
Interesting.
I used to listen like this, and then I used to look up and
Mhm,
then just say what had to be said.
mhm,
Um, and so that went on, the skills developed.
mm,
And then there was a job for, when I graduated from my master's program. There was job opening that Suzuki Motor Corporation was hiring. They had a
mhm,
50-50 partnership
mm,
with the government of India, and they were looking for interpreters. And that seemed like a very respectable job.
mhm.
And before that, I had interpreted for big companies, for Hewlett Packard, for,
Wow.
big, large printing presses, and all kinds of, for visiting delegations at conferences, things like that. And one time, one job was Mitsubishi Heavy was installing a large, huge printing press
Mhm,
at a place called Thomson Press in India that published sort of the Times and Newsweek versions of Indian magazines. So it was
mhm,
India Today was the magazine, and it was published or printed in this press. And they were installing the press, and I had to be in there, inside the press,
wow.
inside the machinery, with the Japanese team, who was explaining to the Indian team how this needs to be run. So then I learned a lot about printing. And so that was the journey to become confident that I can go to the automotive industry after this
Mm, mhm.
and grasp how cars are made,
Interesting.
because it's not going to be just sitting and reviewing notes. I wasn't going to be in meetings. I was going to be following around these engineers from Japan, from Suzuki, who came from Shizuoka,
Mhm.
and they spoke a dialect called Enshuben. And Enshuben was not something that I ever heard. And I spoke standard Japanese,
Mm.
and then I learned how to speak Enshuben,
Wow.
because we had to go with them to the shop floor. We had to look at the cars being made. We had to do quality control. We had to do engine repair work, all of that. And so that had me develop this very interesting Japanese language vocabulary, which I don't use anymore. But
Mm,
as an interpreter, I'm not there to express my opinion.
right.
But I would find that the way I described it at the time was, I'm tired of speaking in somebody else's voice. I'm tired of speaking for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I want my own voice.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be able to speak. And that's why I decided that interpretation, translation is fine, but interpretation is not for me,
Okay.
because I don't want to speak for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized, and it's very, very interesting, because I've had an existential moment listening to your podcasts, when people have talked about, you have talked about, wanting to be a communicator and connecting people. And that's why interpretation is important to you.
Mm-hmm.
Lefteris mentioned that too, like bringing people together. It's all shifted after listening to you saying that that's how you connect people. And if I'm thinking of myself as a connector, then I need to be able to communicate and help others communicate. So thanks to you, my whole, mindset has changed regarding interpretation.
Oh, thank you
I
for saying that.
respect it. I respect it a lot, but I just felt it wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's how, Suzuki was just, it was supposed to be a job. I needed a full-time job, and that's a job. And I learned a lot
Mm-hmm.
and made some, had some very interesting encounters, because it was a male-dominated field.
Mm-hmm.
It was Japanese gachos and bucho people from Japan in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
late 90s, with what are now called Showa era managers.
Mm-hmm.
So they had specific ideas of what women should do and how women should behave, and we never paid attention to them.
Okay. That's awesome.
And we told them they were in our country.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it was a good experience. It taught me a lot. I was only
Mm-hmm.
there for a year,
Okay.
but it taught me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that you wanted to express your own voice, and was that the impetus to actually move to the United States and go to grad school there, or was there anything in between?
There was, I before I went to work for Suzuki, I did this part-time gig arubaito in Japan with a company, and you don't know about this, so this is going to come as news to you. It was a company that brought talent performing artists from all over the world to Japan, and I was their interpreter.
Oh, okay.
And it didn't matter if they were from India, it didn't matter if, as long as they were from an English speaking country or from India, I was their interpreter. So it was going to Japan and being on a bus, on a tour bus, which was awesome, because this was a part of culture and the world that I hadn't seen before, which is Geinokai, so the world of performing art.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be on a bus with them, and we would go. I've been from Aomori to Okinawa on a bus
Cool.
with people, with the music people, with the sound people, with the light people. We also travel with some rabbits. We
What?
because we had a magician from India
Are you
who
serious? That's
had
so cool.
come. And
Oh
so
my
we
gosh.
needed usagi. That's when
Mhm.
I learned that usagi are counted in wa and not in
Yes.
iki, because
So
of their
random.
ears. Um,
Is that why? I didn't know.
yes,
Okay.
because their ears are kind of floppy, floppy.
Gosh.
So I did that for 2 summers, and had very, very good interpretation experience,
Mm-hmm.
and earned some amount of money, and decided to take my aunt, my mom's sister, who has since passed away, and she died very young, uh, to Europe. So my aunt and I traveled around Europe, and I'd come to the United States, and I was like, it's time to, I need to study abroad. I had missed out on a study abroad
Mm,
opportunity to go to Japan. And I said, well, I need to study in the United States. Like everybody's doing it, and I need to do it too.
mm,
And so that's how I applied. And SICE is the one who promised me some money. They said if I did well, they would give me money.
mhm.
And so that's how I ended up at SICE.
I see. I see. And you studied Japan studies, right? That's
Yes.
nice.
I mean, there was nothing else to study. It was Japan. I had to study Japan.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's great. And so please tell me, after you graduated, you went to the
Mhm.
Mansfield Foundation and you worked there for quite some time, about 7 years. Would you mind talking about your experience there?
Yes, I had an experience before that where it applied to the Woodrow Wilson Center, which was the job that I wanted, but I didn't get it. And so I was completely gutted and back to the drawing board. And I went into the Mansfield Foundation, and I was interviewed by Paige Cottingham Streeter and the executive director at the time, Gordon Flake.
Mm,
And I was shaking. It's like 25 years old, like shaking because I thought I'd done well in one interview, and I didn't get the job. And I was like, I'm not getting this one. There's no way. Um, and then I got it. And my first day, I remember walking in, and Paige, who we all know and love in this community,
mm-hmm.
was what I'm walking in. It's my first day on the job, my first ever time working in the United States. So you have to keep that in mind because I don't know how I'm supposed to behave.
Right.
I've only ever worked in India in a factory
Mm-hmm.
in a full-time job, and I had done an internship in Japan at a think tank during my time at SICE. It was a summer internship.
Mm-hmm.
Very different. So I walk in, and Paige is walking out with her bag saying, "Bye. Good to see you. Welcome. It's your first day. Bye. I am leaving for Japan."
Mm.
And well, she's supposed to be my boss.
That's
And
funny.
she's leaving, and so she stopped in the hallway and she said, "Oh, today we have a group of Mansfield fellows starting. It's their orientation."
Mm-hmm.
And I was told to, quote, handle it.
Okay.
It was my first day
Wow.
on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I guess it went off well because I stayed for 7 years. It was a really good time because I learned a lot. But because of the nature of the nonprofit world, my salary was not moving around much. So I was still 30 in the 30s thousands dollars, you know, bracket, so to speak. And it was time to start a family, and there was no way. My husband is an academic. He was finishing up his PhD.
Mm.
There was no way that one could afford to go on with life in that sort of earning that. I didn't want to
Mm.
leave, but it was what am I going to do? So it wasn't really the job that compelled me to leave, and I got poached out of there.
I see.
We had done a program, a U.S. Japan India program, and the the gentleman who was the head of the company that the Indian company in DC that we had partnered with offered me a job.
Mm.
And I decided to take it. It was a tough decision, but on sort of the emotional front, but on the practical front, it was an easy one to do at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I am surprised to learn that you were the general manager of North America. You're so humble about all of this. But and on top of it, this company is like one of the biggest Indian conglomerates ever. And the fact that
Yeah.
You went from a nonprofit to that must have been a huge transition.
It was, but it was a huge transition, but it was also somewhat, I won't say easy because nothing is ever that easy. And but the boss, the person who had hired me, was a retired State Department official.
Oh, okay.
So, in terms of the mental makeup or what's important or where one comes from, there was a parity there. And
Mm,
he had been posted in India, and so there was a comfort.
mhm,
There was a comfort there, but there was a lot of, I remember being very stressed out because I was expecting my son. I was 6 months pregnant,
mm,
and I was going into private sector from nonprofit. And that was something that was difficult to make a decision on
mhm,
because, I started thinking, I've been in this job. I know everybody. If I'm to have a baby, it's the classic woman, about to be a mom dilemma
mhm,
that if I stay here, I'll be looked after.
mm,
I know my job, everyone supports me.
mhm,
My boss at the time had religious beliefs that dictated that women should kind of stay home and take care of the baby. So they would have allowed me to be part time or
mm,
even work from home at a time when nobody worked from home,
mhm,
all of those things. And, but this other thing would be, all of a sudden you have to be corporate. I remember a good friend of mine saying, "Oh, you're going to have to wear stilettos and pearls now."
mm,
And I was like, "Wow, how am I going to do that?" But
mhm.
I decided that I was going that it was more important to have that bump in the salary.
I see.
And so I sucked it up. I decided that I was never going to be the pregnant woman in the room.
Mm,
And I was going to do everything. I was not going to talk about my pregnancy. I was not going to ask for any allowances. I was just going to suck it up and do it. And that's what I did. I was going to New York 2, 3 times a week,
wow.
up there and back, 5 a.m. Amtrak or flying or whatever, attending events, talking at things. The dark suit, the pearls and the stilettos had shown up. Uh, but I was not going to ever, or if somebody with men in the office would say, "So are you okay? Do you need to sit?" And I'm like, "No, I'm fine."
Wow.
And which, I think is also generational. I
Mm,
feel younger people would say, "No, I need the accommodation. I need a
mhm,
minute.
mhm,
I need time." And that's probably the way to do it. But I
mhm.
haven't learned that yet. And so that's what I did until the day my son was born. I was in the office the day he was born.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so I did that for a while. And that was also very interesting work, but it took me away from Japan for a long time.
Mhm. And did you miss Japan because of
I
that?
did. I
Okay.
did. And so when I got this job after that at the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission, and I went to Japan, it had been 8 or 9 years since I had been to Japan.
Mhm,
And I arrived in Tokyo and I felt like Urashima Taro.
mhm.
Everything had changed.
Mhm,
There was a
mhm,
lot more English. There was,
mm,
Japan had started planning for the Olympics. This is 2015. So the
mm.
Olympics were coming. They were only, 5 years away. But things had changed. There were a lot more tourists. I was hearing different languages. And truth be told, I didn't like it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I'm being perfectly honest. I was like, what is this? Where is my Japan?
Mm, I see.
I want to speak Japanese and I want to be, where are my people? And then slowly I had to reacclimate, and things had changed. New buildings had come up,
Mm,
things had moved. But it was good to be back, and very quickly my language came back and
mm,
it was fine.
Could you take a step back and talk about what you do at the Friendship Commission?
So, I'm a civil servant. The Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission is a federal agency. It's an independent federal agency, and I direct the grant making. So it's a grant making agency. I work on grants. I handle some of our internal programs. I do build relationships. I see myself as a connector. I think we're a small shop, but we're very, very dynamic.
Mhm,
And in this space of public diplomacy that is so, so important, and supporting the U.S. Japan Alliance. And I think those of us who are in this business are working very hard, especially right now.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think what you're doing is incredibly important because, especially with some tensions going on with the tariff discussions and other things in terms of diplomatic and economic relations, it's really the people to people, like citizen to citizen relationship that's the most
Mhm.
important and will
Yeah,
keep us going. So, yeah, what are you doing in terms of hosting events and symposia and supporting people to people exchange? I think that's incredible, all that you
I
do.
think, but I think Shiori, all the symposia and the policy events and all of those things can't happen without you either, because we
Thank
need
you.
you to be able to
Thank you.
communicate. So I think we're all in this together. I
Mhm,
remember, I've been talking so much about my teachers in India. One of the first phrases that was taught to us was Jinmyaku.
mhm,
And Jinmyaku is, the human pulse. We all have our fingers on each other's pulses. And I think the community has really come together. It's referred to as an ecosystem now, but
mhm,
the US Japan community in people to people exchange, in public diplomacy, we're all working very hard, and
mhm.
we're all in it together. And the more we support each other and work together, I think we can really make a difference, even though times are tough. But I remember Kazuo saying on your podcast that she sent 6 people to Japan, on the
Mhm,
congressional exchange. That's an exchange that the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission funds.
mhm,
And so if we can take 6 congressional staffers who are bipartisan to Japan and have them see each other as human beings working towards the same thing, then I think we've done our job. It doesn't have to be hundreds. It has to start somewhere, and we're supporting the next generation.
mhm, mhm. Thank you. And I think that's really wonderful, your explanation of Jinmyaku, because I had always thought about it as, I guess, like a network of veins, with
Yeah.
the center
Yes,
being
the
you,
heart.
your heart. So I never thought about the pulse aspect of it, but you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It's a living thing, and you need to keep it updated and keep in touch continuously with everyone. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And I think I have become this very hardcore crusader on connecting people. I'm
Mhm,
constantly introducing people to each other. It'll be mottainai if people don't talk to each other, and people who are
right.
like-minded and there's no agenda.
Mhm, of
But if
course.
there is one in the future,
Mhm,
there's no, you won't feel hesitant about
mhm,
talking to somebody.
mhm, mhm.
So yeah, I think we just have to keep supporting each other
Yeah,
and moving
yeah.
forward.
Mhm. So we just talked about connecting people, and in that vein, I wanted to ask about your Paige, one of your great mentors. And
Yes.
as you know, we all love her, and I
Yeah.
think it's fascinating that she's your boss both at the Mansfield Foundation and now the Friendship Commission as
I
well.
know.
And you've also mentioned that she's also really she has something in common with you, and that's that. As someone who's unique as a stakeholder in the US Japan space. And
Yeah.
so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Of course, yes. I am at the Japan-U.S. Friendship Commission sort of because one day I just received a phone call from Paige
Mm,
while I was at my desk at Tata just working my corporate job. And she said, "Oh, by the way, there's an opening and there's going to be an ad about it, and I think you should look at it." I was like, "Nah, I'm fine where I am."
mm,
Um, But I applied, I ended up interviewing, and Paige and I had an agreement that just because she knew me didn't mean that she was going to hire me.
Of course.
And so anyway, so I got the job, and it seemed like nothing had really changed in the U.S. Japan world because she and I seemed to be interchangeable as far as people were concerned. Uh, I would
Crazy.
go to events
Mm.
and meet people, and they would say, well, I've already met.
Eh,
We've already met. And I don't forget names and faces
mm.
typically, and definitely not when I was younger. Uh, and I would think, well, what are they talking about? And then Paige and I would joke about it. But I remember somebody telling me, who's also a fellow person of color, and she said, how they're not taking the time to think that how much more they're getting by having you two there.
Absolutely. Mhm.
And I hadn't looked at it like that. I was too caught up in why do they think I'm a guy or something
Mm.
like that, as
Mhm, mhm,
opposed to if you take a beat, you will see how much more I have to offer. And that goes back to being multicultural and speaking all these languages and how we feel like we don't fit and we don't belong and whatnot.
mhm,
And then that's what over time I have learned from going to various conferences and whatnot, where I've heard very sort of, women leaders talk about bringing your whole self to
mm,
any team that you work with because
mhm,
that is your value add. When
mhm,
you start editing, you're not doing your team or your colleagues a favor.
mhm,
You think you are, but you're not. It's your perspective. It's
mhm,
your lived experience that
mhm,
that brings it all together and makes for
mhm,
a more cohesive team. So
mhm,
so yeah, Paige and I have had our moments, and we chuckle about it, but
mhm,
we're
mhm,
very grateful to see that the queue that's behind us
mhm,
is not going to have
mhm,
that issue
mhm.
in the
Are you
world of stakeholders.
mhm, mhm. Are you doing anything in particular to foster the next generation and ensuring that people of color are there are more participants in programs and panels and things like that?
Yeah, we have done that in terms of, and I think I might have shared before. I think what tends to happen is that people just default to their friends when they're
Mm,
putting together panels, and that's human nature. The first thing we would do when we start a new venture is talk to our friends.
mhm,
What do you think? But I think making a little bit more effort. So we've worked with our grantees too and said, okay, go outside this area, push. So we've done that kind of guidance. And I hadn't realized the impact my being somewhere makes to somebody else
mm,
in terms of if you can see it, you can be it, because we all
yeah.
have our own imposter syndrome, or I'm not required there. What's the point of me going to that event? Sometimes I'll feel, well, Paige is already there. What do I have to do there?
Because you're interchangeable.
We're
Just
interchangeable,
kidding.
and they've checked their box of
Mm,
who they want. And she is such a stalwart person in the U.S.
mhm,
Japan community. She has
yeah.
everything to offer. I What do I have compared to that?
Mm,
And I've internalized that a lot until slowly it was these young Gen Z who puts me on the spot and says, but Miss Niharika, you're an immigrant like my family,
mm,
and
mhm,
you're South Asian, or
mhm.
you have encountered these issues where your family didn't know what you were going to do with Japanese.
Right.
And so I found that there is something that I have to offer. And so by being there, I am finding now that a lot of women of color are coming to me or finding me on LinkedIn, wanting to connect and wanting to talk for that. But I think, yeah, I do make an effort. I do
Mhm.
make an effort of
Mhm.
just sometimes like catching people and saying, "Hey, listen, I'm going to tell you this."
Mhm.
And I have received very good advice over time. I remember Paige, the first thing that when she and I sat down for a meeting when I went to work for the Mansfield Foundation, told me very clearly, as a person of color, never wear a black and white suit to a catered event.
Oh my God. Wow, really though? Oh my God, that's so sad.
Because it's
Wow.
happened. You've been in a white shirt and a black blazer and black pants or black skirt, and somebody's
Mhm.
asked you to pour the coffee or asked you where the
Wow.
bathroom is.
I had no
I
idea.
learned that as a 25-year-old, and I haven't done it since. And
Mm.
that's what we teach our interns that the people who look like us, we're like, don't do it. Because apparently it's a thing. It'll happen.
Mhm. Wow.
And people will refer to you as things. I've shared this before. I got called a little brown girl who speaks Japanese because somebody couldn't remember my name. They're like,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but it just makes you a more whole person to have that all that kind of experience. I think it
Yeah.
makes you more empathetic.
Mhm.
And you've shared your story and your vulnerabilities, and I think having that, even though it's a terrible memory for you, but that makes you so much more empathetic and kind,
I
that
hope
you would
so.
never ever do that. and
Mhm.
and I want you to know that that is an essential part of who you are, even though it was traumatic. What I really want to thank you for is for building this community, because as I have listened to each and every episode of yours, I have found that there are people who I know but never knew in this way.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
all of a sudden, I feel closer to them in
Mhm.
a way that I can relate to them. And then there are people who I know of but never met. And now I feel like I know them. And I
Yeah.
feel like I can reach out and say, hey, by the way, we met on Chiori's podcast. Uh, but the way that you're doing it, the way that you have, the way that you conduct yourself, and you conduct this whole podcast, not just the intention you have behind it, but the way you do it is what is required in today's world. I am so proud of you for just taking this leap of faith and building a whole community like this. It's very, very important.
Thank you
And
so much.
it really is. And I mean it, because we all need this. We didn't realize we needed it. You told us, you've taught us that we need it. And I have seen you grow through all these 15, 16 episodes.
Mhm.
And it's been wonderful. It's
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're making me tear up.
But that's why
Thank
I'm
you.
here.
Mhm.
Apparently that's what I do. A lot of my interns in their exit interviews, they come out crying, but but for and everybody's like, well, what did she say? She said something terrible. She said, no, Miss Niharika, it makes us cry.
Yeah.
but
Thank you very much.
but it's true though. I think it was your friend, your roommate, I think, Gigi, right?
Yeah, Gigi's great.
Who had
Mhm.
said that she wants people to reach out to her through
Yeah.
this if they're struggling with their Indian identity.
Mhm.
And that was fascinating to me, hearing
I
that she
know.
specifically says Indian,
Yeah.
because we
Mhm.
tiptoe around and we say
I
Native
I
American
know, right? 'Cause
and all that. But I remember being asked, and this is something you can share with her because it'll make her as crazy as it made me when somebody asked me. They
Mhm.
said, well, the where are you from question. And I said, oh, I'm Indian. And without batting an eyelid, they said, dot or feather?
What does that mean? Okay, what is Oh wow, my goodness.
Or feather,
That's crazy.
right?
That's
So
wow.
Indian and Indian. And I had never heard that before.
It's my first time also. Oh my
And
goodness.
I honestly did not know how to react to that.
Right, right.
And then I think I probably took a beat or two and I said, well, why don't you go look at the map or something like that? I don't know what I said.
Mm-hmm.
But but yeah, people say the darndest things, and you're 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 making sure that that doesn't happen in a more sort of in a deeper way, rather than just saying don't say this or making people feel uncomfortable and that they have to be on eggshells or whatnot. But
Thank you.
but yeah, thank you. I've learned so much
Thank you so much for
about
saying that.
myself too, but I've learned so much from all the guests and all their experiences because they resonate with me and my family.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Onoda's story about growing up in Gary, Indiana. You know, I
Oh,
my husband grew up in rural Illinois and is Asian.
oh, uh-huh.
So there's a lot. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot to unpack. There's a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope we can continue the conversation
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and keep talking. I wish you well.
Thank you. So you've continuously provided advice for younger people and people who might be watching this podcast. But may I ask, yeah, just as in terms of this formal question and answer,
Yeah.
would you be able to provide any advice for people who might be struggling with their identities or making big life decisions?
Yeah, that's a tough question, and sometimes I feel like I'm very ill-equipped to find, offer that kind of advice. But in terms of identity, I feel like it's not this or that. Your identity is not half this or quarter that or blood quantum this or that. It's all, it's both, it's triple, it's quadruple, it's whatever it's meant to be. I also have found that identity shifts around.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same. I think there's one thing which is your, cultural, national, ethnic identity and where you think you belong or you don't belong. But then there are also life things that happen. And I recently read, like recently, like 2 days ago, of a concept called matrescence, which is like adolescence, but
Mm-hmm.
for women who have given birth. And apparently, the
Oh.
way adolescence changes the body of a
Mm-hmm.
human being and the neurons and the brain cells and whatnot, the whole idea of matrescence is that it changes the woman after she's given birth,
Mm-hmm.
that actual biological things happen. And that in and of itself is an identity shift.
Interesting.
So biologically, your identity has shifted, and then how the world sees you, your identity shifts. And that's why a lot of times the women, and I think especially as women, we all go through changes in identity. You don't have to biologically give birth for that to happen, but we all struggle sometimes with our identities as, am I the perfect daughter? I
Mm-hmm.
live abroad. My mom's over there overseas. I'm not able to take care of her. What am
Mm-hmm.
I doing? Should I move back? Should I not? Am I American? Am I Japanese? Am I Indian? That is constant. It's not going to go away.
Right.
But the best we can do is manage it. And the best we can do is, I think it was Grace Kim who said that use it as a skill set.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you are, you know, Japanese and you're American and you're Japanese and you're American
Mm-hmm.
is what makes you perfect to do this and put us all at ease and to have these conversations. If you weren't, you wouldn't, and there would be nothing wrong with that, but you would not be able to feel it. You would
Mm-hmm.
conduct it in a more intellectual way
I see.
rather than a kandoteki way
Mm-hmm.
where people feel that they can connect to you and to your experience. So if I have any advice is just to own it, to own the superpower
Mm-hmm.
of of being able to speak different languages, to being able to think in different languages. But those are the questions, right? Like who are you? And I learned from my son, because my son is Indian, Korean, Irish, German.
Wow,
All of
that's so
those are
cool.
mixed in there.
Mm-hmm.
But and I see that he owns his Korean identity, even though my husband doesn't own it the way my son owns it. And
Mm-hmm.
he owns his Indian identity, and he's got friends everywhere. And his friend, and he told me, he said, "Bro, I get in where I fit in."
Mm, interesting.
And so for me, when I came to the United States, I was very specific. I was here for grad school. I was
Mm-hmm.
not going to hang out with Indian people.
Mm.
I did not leave a billion behind to come here and find them.
Yes,
I was not
billion. That's a lot.
I
Mm-hmm.
was not going to keep eating Indian food all day long, because what's the point? Why
Mm-hmm.
are you going to go abroad and eat Indian food?
Right.
Um, I was not, there was no reason for me to go back to India, because India didn't hold that much midoku
Mm-hmm.
value in that sense, or
Mm-hmm.
appeal for me.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as I saw my family and my parents, so I could meet them in Europe, meet them somewhere halfway, it didn't matter. And slowly I realized that India is what I missed, because when I went back, it was the sights and the sounds and the
Mm-hmm.
smells.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made me whole. So I own my Indianness. I'm very much Indian, but I'm also American, because I always say that I was born and raised in India, but I grew up in the United States. So my mental growing up
Mm-hmm.
happened here, even though I was not born and raised here. So I feel that my upbringing informs who I am as a human being. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being both. I've been accused of, in relationships and all that, people will say, well, you're not, your heart is in two places. Your heart is split. And I decided that my heart is not split. I just grew a whole new one.
Oh, that's lovely.
So I have two,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe
Mm-hmm.
three or four.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I think just knowing that the world is more interconnected and more multicultural, and the way we grew up was uh, was different, but it makes us more seamless actually now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and more able to connect with each other, more able to speak, different languages, and talk, and and meet people. And so for me, my best friends are people I went to grad school with,
Mm-hmm.
not people who I share genetic makeup with,
Right.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so, or people I've worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And if you happen to be Indian, sure, why not? But I found when I was working at Tata with Indian Americans, I had nothing in common with them, Shiori,
Oh, interesting. I see.
because they were second generation Indian people
Mm-hmm.
who were born and raised here, immigrant parents, so that,
Mm-hmm.
their parents forced them to assimilate. They don't
Mm.
speak the language. And then the other community, who are Indians who have moved to Northern Virginia or wherever to work,
Mm-hmm.
they are working in the IT sector, they're
Mm-hmm.
here, they have different aspirations. I can't relate to them either.
Right. Right.
So for me, my community is people I go to church with, people I went to school with, the PTA people,
Mm-hmm.
hockey music parents, the hockey parents, people I share something in common with, that's also my identity. I never
Mm-hmm.
knew growing up in India that I would be a hockey mom
It's funny.
or a music mom or whatever. But those
Mm-hmm.
are those are also identities, And I think we don't realize it, but we all have multiple identities. They don't just have to be linguistic or cultural.
That's
They're
true.
just, normative societal identities too.
Hmm.
We're all constantly code switching. We're all
Hmm.
chameleons. We have to. We have to be that.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
boring otherwise.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. So, yeah, one dimension is boring.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh, thank you so much for saying that. I think it's so helpful to be able to know that yes, we all have multiple identities. And the fact that you said that there's scientific evidence that there's biological changes that happen
Yeah.
too, that's so interesting. And I'm sure it happens for those of us who don't have kids also. Like when we come to a different country, we start to eat different things, and that probably changes our
Well,
biological makeup as well.
exactly. I can
Mm,
tell looking at somebody that they grew up in the United States,
mm,
if they're Indian,
mm,
or if they grew up abroad,
mm,
because the way we carry ourselves changes.
mm,
Here when I'm in Asia, I'm like, ooh, sumimasen, like a
mm,
little more bowing to the cars and
mm.
doing all of that. Here, more upright. The way I speak starts changing
Right.
the muscles in my face. So I think that's biological. Stages of life are biological, those
Yeah.
identities change.
Mm,
um you go for your annual checkup and the doctor will say, well, now that you're 40, we're going to be asking these other questions,
mm,
or you have to know that your metabolism is going to do this or that.
mm.
So that's an identity shift, because you're like, holy moly, that's not who I am.
Right.
Why are they telling me that? Or when you go to the gym and you're exercising and you're like, well, when I was 27, I was able to do this, but now I can only do this because I'm 35. That's an identity shift, because you're not
True.
benching as much or lifting as much.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and so I think it's constant. It's just
mm,
constant.
mm,
This is an identity shift for you, right? The being a
mm.
podcaster.
Yes, very much so. But I love it.
Yeah. So there's some
Yeah.
things that we love and some things that we don't,
Mm,
but we're all shape shifters.
mm, mm. It's true. Thank you so much. I love it.
So get in where you fit in.
Yes, will do.
I want to thank you again for building this community and for this conversation, because we haven't had an opportunity ever to sit down and chat, and so I
Mhm,
really appreciated it.
mhm.
And I look forward to all the others and binge listening to them.
Thank you so much. I really,
Thank
really appreciate
you.
your time.